So spooky season continues, full steam ahead. Today we're going to talk about a monster. It's a different kind of monster movie, and one that, if I'm honest, I watched for the first time probably younger than I should have. And it's a movie I haven't seen in a very long time, and I thought I would just give it a watch again and just see if it's as good as I remember it. That film is Cape Fear. Let's discuss. So I was probably about 9 when I first saw this movie. Way too young. My parents, some of you know this about me, my parents had a barber shop that they worked out of, and then we lived in. Dad was, he was the barber, so he did a lot of the haircuts and stuff, and mom did work with a lot of the women and some of the men who needed perms and curls and things like that. And in that shop was, we had a TV, and there was a lot of sports and stuff. We had a lot of sports videos, a lot of movies, and like most salons, most places have a lot of media there that customers can also enjoy, magazines and things like that. We had a lot of VHSs, and one of those VHS tapes was a film directed by Martin Scorsese called Cape Fear. And there was always something on at the shop there, and us kids running around would catch things that were probably way too young, were factually too young. They were too advanced for our young age, but nevertheless, they were on, and these are things that we just caught. And Cape Fear was one of those movies. So, and sometimes it was weird. We watched a lot of movies, and sometimes when trying to decide what movie to watch at night, when things calmed down and the shop was closed, or it was slow in the evening hours, and we were just relaxing. We would pick different movies to watch, and Cape Fear oddly was a movie that sometimes we picked, and I don't know if we picked it. I don't know. Sometimes we might have picked it at some point, the kids, but that was one of the movies we watched. And one of the cool things about this VHS tape that we had was some VHSs, you remember, had trailers for other movies or ads for, special edition releases of the movies you were watching. This one had a preview for the original Cape Fear from the 1960s, starring Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck in the lead roles. And that movie also said, hey, you're watching the 1991 Cape Fear, but also check out this original. And I was always fascinated by that, because I at the time I was just like, oh, there's another version. Okay, never really thought anything of it, because the 1991 version for a long time was the definitive version that we watched. I, to this day, still haven't seen the 1962 original, but that's the next thing I'm going to watch at some point. But the remake, here we go. I was hanging out, and I said, you know what? One day I'd seen Cape Fear listed on YouTube randomly for free. I thought, okay, one day I'm going to watch it. I got to catch it before they pull it, because YouTube, as you may or may not know, that they rotate through the movies that are free, and they put new ones up every so often. So Cape Fear was a good movie, and I remembered it being very chilling even as a young person, very good as a good story and stuff. And I hadn't seen it I don't remember the last time I saw it. Probably I might have been in middle school, maybe freshman year of high school, last time I saw the movie. So it was well overdue for a rewatch, and I wanted to see if it was still good. And as we're in spooky season, Halloween time, there's stories of slashers and killers and monsters and stuff. Max Cady is a different kind of monster, and one that I decided would fit right in with the Scary Season Times movie discussion. So if you don't know anything about Cape Fear, this movie is about two men. One, Max Cady, played by Robert De Niro, and Sam Borden, played by Nick Nolte. Max Cady is a man who was recently released from prison after a 14-year stay. and he's on a mission. His public defender, Sam Borden, Nolte's character, did not fully do his job in defending him. And that resulted in Max Cady going to jail. When Cady gets out, he's determined to seek revenge on Sam Borden. That's the main plot of the story. In addition to that, you have to understand the reason that Sam Borden did not do his job was because Max Cady had sexually assaulted a young teenage girl. And as a father himself of a young daughter, something morally obviously didn't sit right with him. So he was content to not do the job to the best of his ability, to which resulted in Cady going to prison. So that's what we have going on. DeNiro devours every inch of this role. And again, I haven't seen the original, so I can't compare it to that. But I know what I remember, and I know what I watched recently. And I hope to do this explanation of Max Cady's character and De Niro's performance justice. So De Niro has had a storied career. Anybody who knows this man knows he's played a multitude of characters over his long career span, from Travis Bickle to Neil McCauley from Heat to Al Capone from The Untouchables, Louis Garza from Jackie Brown. The list goes on, and more characters that have been questionable or on the other side of the law, we'll say. And if you look it up, you'll find that Max Cady is probably the number one character that he's played that has been the most serious. Max Cady is number one on a lot of lists of best characters Robert De Niro has played, but also the worst villains he's played. It's like Max Cady is like the top tier. Look it up or ask anybody who knows anything about De Niro's career and what some of his stronger characters have been. Max Cady is probably going to be one that someone's going to mention. De Niro plays this role with such craft. There are nuances to the role. He's playing Cady with the way he seems to seethe with anger and just frustration, and it's just beneath the surface. You can tell he's ready to act, but because there is a method to how he's going about exacting his revenge. De Niro plays it with such nuance, and it's a treat to watch, really, because and you can see the collaboration between Scorsese and De Niro in this movie, the way they build tension with the actions in this movie and in character. Cady, when he meets Borden out of prison for the first time, he could act, but there's something about he wants to enjoy the process of the revenge. It's not just I'm going to jack this guy up as soon as I get out. It's things start out very minorly at first. It's very, very slight. It's to the point to where it's so subtle, almost to the point to where you don't know if Cady's really going to be a threat or not. Well, if you're bored anyway, you don't really know. But we know there's some other stuff that's jumping off pretty soon. And it's so well done. And it's like a dial that's just being ever so slightly turned up. And you see it in terms of how the movie is progressing, but how Cady as a character develops throughout the story. And De Niro's work in the process of that it's very, very good. It's such that to the point to where a lot of the sort of major things that happen, sometimes it happens off screen. We don't see Cady engaged in too many acts, but it's clear that he's doing stuff that is terrorizing Sam and his family. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like we don't see him in action. We do see him do some pretty deplorable things in this movie, but there's enough happening in the periphery off camera that we don't see that adds to the fear that this character is bringing to the proceedings. It's really, really unsettling. And it's just tight. It gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you go through the end of the story. It's really, it's a masterclass, really, in acting from De Niro, and it's very effective. He's a man that is driven He's got a singular goal to exact revenge, but it's more than that. He also wants Sam to see the depths of his mistake. And he's feels self-righteous. He's quoting, and he's intelligent. He's quoting all these different things from, obviously he had a lot of time to read in prison. So he's quoting things from the Bible. He's quoting things from all these, like, these great texts from great thinkers and stuff. And he knows the law at this stage now. He knows where to exploit the loopholes and where he can get away with certain things. That alone makes him that much more threatening. But I think more so because he almost feels guided by God, by faith. His faith is so strong. It's like that's the thing that actually makes him, I think, even more dangerous. He feels like his acts are justified because his attorney messed up, did something wrong, and he's like, no, I'm not only gonna take revenge, I need to show you how wrong you were by not doing the job that you signed up to do. You took an oath and you did not do that. And it's like, you almost like, oh, he's kind of right. That doesn't make him actually right as a character. He's doing a lot of things that are factually wrong, morally wrong, and borderline, evil, for lack of a better term. And yet in that instance, when it comes to Sam Borden, there's something, it's like, well, he's correct to be angry that Sam messed up, but it doesn't justify doing all the jacked up stuff he's doing. And yet he feels justified. De Niro plays Katie with a sense of, there's a coolness about him. He's very charming. He's intellectual, super intelligent. And there are tiny moments of vulnerability. Or, he's talking about his daughter who he never got to know. He's talking about the abuse he suffered in prison. There's those little moments that he shares only with Sam. And yet he's extremely calm. He's cool. And he's systematically taking action against Sam and his family. It's not just about, it's much more personal. And yeah, De Niro does a fantastic job. Nick Nolte, I thought, was also very good as Sam Borden. He feels like John Proctor in a way. Like, I don't know if you guys know The Crucible, but it's another good story. I highly recommend you watch that movie or read the play. It's very good. But Sam Borden is kind of like John Proctor in the way that John Proctor is a good man, fundamentally, morally good, who has a moment of weakness as a human that comes back to haunt him majorly. And I think Sam, similarly, he's ultimately a good man. He's an attorney. He's a good dad. He's a good husband. He's a flawed man, though. He is flawed, as evidenced by, his outside activities outside of his marriage, where it's not really clear whether or not he's actually having an affair, but it's sort of suggested that he is. And then of course his decision to not fully defend Katie 14 years prior to the start of the story, that leads to Katie's conviction. That is a fatal mistake. He had no idea it was going to come back to get him 14 years later. But he is a good man. He just made a mistake, and now he's got to pay for that. And the way Nolte plays nervousness, and he plays up the tension physically in his body very well. At first, he's unsure of sort of what's going on with Katie, but then little things start to happen. Katie's camping out outside the house. Like, he can't really do anything. You can't press charges. The police can't arrest him because he hasn't really done anything. And the way Nolte plays it, though, is very effective. I think particularly when things get really tense and he's chain smoking and he's like shaking and he's nervous about what's happening because he's afraid for his family. He's afraid because Katie is out there terrorizing everybody, and then that's the. But it's really focused. It's whatever he's doing is really all about to send a message to Sam Borden, and it's really, really well done. Jessica Lange plays his wife Lee. She's very good. Particularly during some of the marital discussions when they're having, couple arguments and stuff. But she's also just good. She offers a sound support. I think you really feel like the two of them have fiery personalities. You could see why they were married. And you see why when they fight, you see why. It makes perfect sense. Anyone who's been around parents, well, I can speak for myself. My parents have similar energies where they can be fiery or whatever it is, and so it feels to me just like, oh, it's like watching my parents when they fight. This is how they fight, and when things are cool, this is how it looks when it's cool. Juliette Lewis is fantastic in this movie. I don't know if this was her first movie. It might have been, but she does very well as a young, awkward teenager. I think there's a scene she had with Robert De Niro, and that's just top tier acting. That's where you really get to see her without the influence of the parents. It's her and Max Cady in a room together, and they're interacting, and you get to see there is a real honesty in that scene. Honesty from Danielle's position, but also oddly too, honesty from Max Cady. It's a great scene. So, and Juliette Lewis, she plays very well. The other cool thing about this movie, I really like that the cameo appearances from Gregory Peck, Robert Mitchum, and Martin Balsam. If you don't know, these three men were in the original Cape Fear. Again, I haven't seen it fully, but I know I've seen pieces of it, so I know enough. That's like, oh yeah, that's the role reversal, particularly with Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. Gregory Peck is Max Cady's attorney. Gregory Peck played the original Sam Borden, and then Robert Mitchum, who played the original Max Cady, in this movie is a detective. He's a cop trying to help the current Sam Borden. And that's kind of cool. And then Martin Balsam, who I remember from Twilight Zone and a lot of different things from the 1960s, particularly. He is the judge in this movie, and he's a cop in the original. It's actually really cool. Like, for Scorsese, as a nerd of sort of film history and being a fan of the original Cape Fear, what a treat that must have been for him to get the three, particularly even if you didn't get Martin Balsam, but if you got Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum, these two dudes from the original, and who were actually powerhouse actors in the prime of their careers. That's a major score for somebody like Scorsese. That's ridiculous. Like, that just feels like that's amazing to get those dudes. Gregory Peck, by the way, plays an attorney in How to Kill a Mockingbird. If you don't know that movie, another great movie from the 1960s, based on a great book. If you haven't seen that movie, you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. And I mention that because it's cool to see him go from playing a good attorney, a good man in To Kill a Mockingbird, to an attorney in this movie who's defending someone who we know is not a good person. Additionally, this movie also has pretty sound support from people like Joe Don Baker, who I remember from at least 3 James Bond movies, The Living Daylights, GoldenEye, and Tomorrow Never Dies, and Fred Dalton Thompson, who, he was a lawyer, actor, politician from Tennessee, and he was in Law and Order. And then Alina Douglas, who plays the sort of assistant to Sam Borden. She's very good as well in this movie. It's a good, stacked, very strong cast in this movie. So just other thoughts. You come to the story and you think, like, who's right? Is Cady right? Is Sam right? And I think what came up for me was that they're both kind of right. So morally, Cady was wrong. He raped a teenage girl. He should have been punished for that. But on principle, he's right, because Sam, his job was to defend this dude. So that's why he's angry. And then Sam, morally, he's right, because he, as a dad to a daughter, is like, no, this dude raped a teenage girl, go to jail, F you. He was wrong in terms of his job, but he's morally right because he took an oath to defend this dude. Your job was to defend this dude, It's an interesting dynamic, and something that's really cool to see the two of them play off from each other. And the other thing about Sam is interesting is like he almost comes off like he's passive in a lot of ways. He takes action in some ways to make sure his family's protected as best he can, doing things like putting out a restraining order and hiring different people to try to make sure he's protected and his family is protected. But when things really come down to it, he's cowardly a little bit. There's an element of it that's interesting because he's the dad. He's trying to be the protector or whatever it is, and yet he does eventually take action. But it's almost like it's too little, too late because Katie's still coming. It's like he's fighting this force that's this energy that's just not stoppable. You cannot, whatever Sam is doing, nothing is working. You almost go, you have to kill this dude. But even that, he's like, I have to take action. And even that is like something that's an interesting dynamic of how it plays out. You have that kind of character. This is why I think also Sam Borden is a good character. And the way Nick Nolte played it is fantastic. There's so many layers to this guy. And a lot of layers to Katie too. But he's single-minded in his goal. I'm going to get this dude. And it's like, and he's going through all these different obstacles. In a lot of ways, they're almost foils for each other. Almost. Because it's like they both have obstacles that they're trying to overcome against the other person. But it's like Katie is overcoming all these massive obstacles physically, mentally, and he's winning in a way. Like it's weird. And you want Sam and everybody to win. And here's the thing, they both kind of win. But I think you can make a stronger case that Katie ultimately wins this battle, which brings me back to the title of Cape Fear. Now, as a kid, I thought that Cape Fear, the name, was really about because Max Cady was a person you had to fear. And then I learned later that Cape Fear is actually a place. You can look it up. It's a real place. I didn't know this. And then when I think about it now in the context of the movie, Cape Fear is also a metaphoric place for the Borden family. At the end of the day, it's a place that exists in their hearts and minds that they can't really get away from. It's not a place in real life they're not going to go back to Cape Fear probably in real life anymore for some time. But they can't leave it also because it's here, the place. And Cape Fear also, to me, when I think about it, comes to represent Cady, and not necessarily what he stood for, but just his existence in the lives of the Borden family. So when I look at it that way, ultimately it's effective, and it's a fantastic title for a thriller. Anything that deals with like fear, it's genius. And Scorsese directed the heck out of this movie, and the shots are very tight. There's a lot of close-ups. There's a lot of just the shots reflect the tension in this movie. It's just it's a great movie, and I highly recommend the movie. So if you've never seen the 1991 version of Cape Fear, I highly recommend you check it out because it's very good. And that's going to do it for this review. If you stuck around throughout this situation, thank you for your time and for hanging out for a little bit. Come on back. So in the meantime, take it easy, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.